The day Karen blocked the only entrance to my ranch, she thought she was teaching a stubborn farmer a lesson. What she didn't realize was that she had just started a chain reaction that would cost her reputation, her authority, and eventually turn the entire neighborhood against her. My name is Ethan Walker, and for nearly 20 years my family had worked the same stretch of ranch land on the edge of a growing luxury development. Life was simple until the HOA arrived. At first, they promised organization and higher property values. Then came the rules, the inspections, and finally Karen, the HOA president who treated every regulation like a personal weapon. When Karen decided my ranch trucks were ruining the community image, she took things further than anyone expected. She physically blocked my entrance and left me unable to move livestock, equipment, or supplies. Bro, when I first heard what happened next, I genuinely couldn't believe it. Because instead of fighting her directly, I followed every rule she loved so much, and that decision changed everything. The trouble started long before Karen parked herself in front of my ranch gate. Looking back, the signs were everywhere. A few years earlier, the area surrounding my property had been mostly open land, scattered ranches, and a handful of families who understood what country life actually looked like. Then developers arrived. Within months, construction crews were carving roads through old fields, luxury homes were appearing where cattle once grazed, and a brand new HOA was being marketed as the centerpiece of the community. The brochures promised peaceful living, beautiful views, and strict standards that would supposedly protect property values. What they never mentioned was how quickly those standards could turn into a power trip. At first, I stayed out of it. My ranch existed before the development, and I had legal access easements, livestock permits, and every document required to operate. The county had confirmed it multiple times. My cattle trucks used the same access road they had used for years. Feed deliveries arrived weekly. Veterinarians came and went when necessary. Nothing had changed on my side. The only thing that changed was the arrival of people who suddenly decided they didn't like looking at a working ranch. Karen became HOA president almost immediately. She was the kind of person who seemed to enjoy authority far more than responsibility. Every week there was a new complaint. My fencing was supposedly unattractive. My tractors were supposedly too visible from the road. My supply trailers were supposedly lowering neighborhood appeal. Every concern was wrapped in official language, but everyone knew exactly where it was coming from. Karen wasn't interested in compromise. She wanted control. The letters started arriving regularly. Then came inspection notices. Then photographs attached to violation reports. I would receive warnings for things that had existed on the property for over a decade. Some reports were so ridiculous they bordered on comedy. One notice claimed that a group of cattle standing near a fence created an unpleasant visual experience for residents. Another suggested I should relocate equipment storage buildings that were permanently anchored to concrete foundations. Reading those complaints felt like stepping into another reality. I tried being reasonable. I attended meetings. I provided documentation. I explained county regulations. Every time the facts proved my operation was legal, Karen simply moved to another complaint. That's exactly how some people operate in real life. They aren't looking for solutions. They're looking for leverage. And when one tactic fails, they immediately search for another. 3 months passed, and tensions kept growing. Meanwhile, the ranch remained successful. We expanded livestock operations, hired additional workers, and secured several new supply contracts. Ironically, the more successful the ranch became, the more determined Karen seemed to be. It was almost as if seeing the ranch thrive offended her personally. Then came the incident that changed everything. One morning, a feed supplier called before sunrise. Their truck was running ahead of schedule and would arrive within an hour. That delivery was important because several livestock pens were scheduled for rotation later that day. Without the feed shipment, the entire schedule would be disrupted. I headed toward the entrance expecting a normal workday. Instead, I found a massive obstacle sitting directly across the access point. At first, I thought a construction vehicle had broken down. Then I got closer and realized what I was looking at. Several large decorative barriers, heavy landscaping planters, and temporary metal barricades had been positioned directly in front of the ranch entrance. The setup looked deliberate. Nothing about it was accidental. Workers arriving behind me couldn't get through. Delivery vehicles couldn't get through. Livestock transport trailers couldn't get through. The entire entrance had effectively been sealed. And sitting nearby, watching the situation unfold with complete confidence, was Karen. Bro, hearing about this part still blows my mind. She genuinely believed she had found a way to force a ranch that had operated for decades into submission. What she didn't know was that every barrier she placed at that gate was quietly setting up the biggest mistake of her entire HOA career. Because while everyone else saw a blocked entrance, I was beginning to see an opportunity. For the moment I realized Karen had intentionally blocked the entrance, I knew this situation was bigger than another HOA complaint. This wasn't a warning letter or a pointless violation notice. This was interference with an active business operation. Every hour that gate remained blocked, deliveries were delayed, employees were stuck waiting, and livestock schedules became harder to manage. Yet Karen sat there acting like she had already won. What made the situation even stranger was how confident she seemed. She walked around the barricades taking photos, speaking with a few HOA supporters, and acting as if she was overseeing some major community improvement project. Meanwhile, several residents were beginning to gather nearby. Some looked confused. Others looked uncomfortable. Even people who normally supported the HOA seemed surprised that the ranch entrance had been completely shut down. I immediately began documenting everything. Every barrier. Every vehicle delay. Every blocked delivery. Every minute of lost access. Years of ranching had taught me something important: emotions fade, but evidence lasts forever. While Karen expected an argument, I gave her none. I simply recorded, photographed, and documented every detail. That decision turned out to be critical. As the day continued, the consequences started piling up. Feed deliveries had to wait. A livestock transport company reported scheduling issues. Service vehicles were forced to reschedule. Employees stood around unable to complete assignments. What Karen saw as a simple inconvenience was rapidly becoming a documented chain of operational disruptions. Then something happened that completely changed my perspective. One of the contractors working inside the development quietly approached me. He explained that Karen had apparently ordered the barriers installed after claiming the ranch road was being overused and damaging the image of the community. The problem was that she had never received approval from the county, never consulted the easement documents, and apparently never checked whether she even had authority to block the entrance in the first place. When I heard that, everything clicked. Karen hadn't created a legal restriction. She had created a liability. And the more I learned, the bigger that liability appeared to be. Over the next few days, I continued operating as carefully as possible while gathering information. County offices were contacted. Property records were reviewed. Easement agreements were examined. The answers coming back were incredibly interesting. The access route had protected legal status, and interfering with it carried consequences far beyond HOA regulations. Bro, this is where the story started getting unbelievable. Karen thought she was cornering a ranch owner. In reality, she had stepped directly into a situation she didn't understand. And while she continued celebrating her supposed victory, I was quietly preparing a response so perfectly within the rules that nobody could accuse me of breaking a single one. Karen loved rules. She constantly talked about rules. She enforced rules whenever possible. What she didn't realize was that very soon, those same rules were about to trap her in a way she never saw coming. By the end of the week, I had everything I needed. County records confirmed the access easement. Photos documented every obstruction. Delivery logs showed the delays. Most importantly, multiple notices had already been sent requesting that the barriers be removed. Karen ignored every single one. She was so convinced she was right that she never considered the possibility that the rules might apply to her too. Then came the day of the inspection. 6 county officials arrived to examine the blocked entrance. Karen rushed over, expecting to defend her actions. What she didn't expect was hearing that the barricades themselves violated several regulations and had to be secured immediately until removal crews arrived. The officials ordered that nobody interfere with the site while documentation was completed. Here's where the malicious compliance came in. The temporary compliance chain used to secure the restricted area was attached directly across the gate section Karen had been standing beside all morning. When officials instructed everyone to remain outside the marked area, Karen suddenly found herself stuck on the wrong side of the secured gate while crews processed the violation paperwork. For nearly an hour, she had to wait there while residents watched the situation unfold. Bro, the irony was unbelievable. The very gate she tried to use to control everyone else became the symbol of her own mistake, and the entire neighborhood finally saw it. After the inspection, the barriers were removed within days, and full access to the ranch was restored. The HOA quickly distanced itself from Karen's decision once the legal documents became public. Residents who had quietly tolerated her behavior started asking difficult questions about how so much authority had been exercised without proper approval. Karen's credibility collapsed almost overnight. The ranch, meanwhile, returned to normal operations. Deliveries resumed, livestock schedules recovered, and business continued without interruption. The funniest part was that the entrance remained exactly where it had always been. After months of conflict, nothing changed, except the person who thought she could control it. Looking back, this story proves something a lot of entitled people never learn: power only works when it's backed by actual authority. 7 Karen spent months trying to control a ranch that legally operated long before her HOA existed, and in the end, her own actions created the consequences she faced. Bro, that's exactly why this story went viral in the neighborhood. The comeback wasn't built on anger or revenge, it was built on patience, documentation, and letting the rules speak for themselves. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more unbelievable HOA drama, entitled Neighbor Meltdowns, Revenge Stories, and Satisfying Karma. Drop a comment below and tell me, what would you have done if someone tried to block your property entrance like this?